And actually, the state of California just introduced legislation. I believe it passed through a Senate committee. I don't think it had a full vote in the California State Senate, but there's legislation now in California that would prevent these changes from being used by California schools and California textbooks. And California and Texas are, of course, the biggest consumers of textbooks. So what those states do, and Texas in particular, what those states do usually makes its way into the textbooks. So it's great that one of the two major textbook consumers is pushing back on these changes.
Exactly, yeah. I was wondering where that bill was going. Hopefully that will pass. You know, and then we've been hearing these things that with the Texas, you know, with these textbooks, that now the publishers have the technology that, you know, they can be a little bit more versatile in what's being published and, you know, take some of these clauses out. But I still think that many people are concerned that you know, these changes are going to just go through across the line anyway.
Absolutely. We received a huge response from our membership, our members around the country to our campaign to get in touch with textbook publishers. And the response that we received from the publishers, it seems to punt it down the road a little bit and says, you know, they were waiting for the final results, and these kinds of reviews and changes won't happen for another few years. So it certainly leaves a little bit something to be desired, but it seems clear that they're not quite, you know, looking at this issue in a public way at this time. But we're absolutely going to continue to look for ways to engage and educate publishers about our concerns and ensure that, you know, these changes in Texas don't affect the welfare and education of students around the country.
I was wondering how that was going, and as a matter of fact, how I found out about what you guys are doing is, this was like maybe 2 God discussion radio shows ago. We were just covering the news, and somebody from Sedona called in and said, you need to go to the Interfaith Alliance. They have this wonderful petition up.
Oh, great.
And, yeah, so, you know, people are watching what you're doing. They're interested. And so first of all, can you tell people where your website is and then how they can access that petition?
Absolutely. If you go to interfaithalliance.org, we have a brand new action center, actually. So interfaithalliance.org, I believe, / take action. But if you go to our homepage, interfaithalliance.org, you'll see a link to our action center, and where you can find all of our action alerts, including one that will enable you to send a letter to 3 major textbook publishers and tell them of your concerns with these latest changes, and let them know that you're watching and care about what children around the country are learning.
And it's, you know, I did that as soon as I heard about it, and it takes maybe, you know, a minute to do.
Absolutely. We've got a sample letter up there that you can choose to edit or just send as is. The most important part is that they're hearing from you and hearing that you care. So in just another little shameless plug on our homepage, you can see where there's an area where you'll be able to sign up for our email alerts, and we can keep you in the loop on things that are happening nationwide. And we also have, my last shameless plug, I promise, Reverend Gaddy has a weekly radio show called State of Belief that you can listen to online, and you can also sign up for the iTunes podcast at stateofbelief.com or from the Interfaith Alliance website. It's a project of ours. And every week, Reverend Gaddy talks to fascinating people who have new books out, people who are doing great work on a variety of issues at the intersection between religion and politics. So it's a great way to stay in the loop on the major issues of the day.
Oh, he's great. I've seen him on Rachel Maddow's show. You know, he's an excellent commenter.
Thank you.
And so, well, okay, just down to a practical issue before, you know, I let you go here. How do you think this is going to affect kids if these textbooks do get distributed through at least half the country? You know, when I was trying to think about, okay, how will that affect kids? Yes, it's obvious they're going to be indoctrinated as they get older. But a few years ago, in my 30s, I had a good friend who was a Japanese-American woman. And she'd grown up in America, but she was a Buddhist. That's all she knew. And so she started dating this man, and he told her that you must convert to Catholicism before I'll marry you. Well, I had been baptized a Catholic, so it was just sort of like, you're baptized, that's it, go your way. Well, she had to take all of these different classes, and what struck me about it, because I was helping her study, was that here all of her life she had celebrated Christmas because Americans did that, but she didn't know the whole Christmas story. She didn't know who Jesus was or any of those types of things. And what struck me about it was, even here in this country, we may say we're a Christian nation and everybody is Christian, but there are a lot of people who have no idea what this is that you're talking about. It's confusing to them. And I was thinking, how would that translate to a kid who's, going to school who may not understand these concepts? And then find out this is a Christian nation, there's no wall of separation, and that must feel very ostracizing or something. I can't even imagine what it must be like.
Right, and that's the challenge of teaching religion, which, an understanding of religion and the influence of religion on history is so important. It's hard to study the Crusades without having a basic understanding of Christianity. It's hard to study Renaissance art without understanding, the stories of the New Testament. But, it's challenging because you're dealing with, especially in elementary school, children who are still growing and developing and learning, what their family believes, what their friends believe, what they themselves believe. And I think that if children are learning that the First Amendment doesn't mean that they have the freedom to worship and believe as they choose, and that the government won't claim one religion over another, then we have a pretty big problem here.
Well, we do, and I think it'll make them feel almost criminal or something,
mm-hmm.
But, it's a good point that you brought up that I personally think that students should learn about different religions in school, not from a preaching point of view, but from a cultural point of view.
Right, and there's certainly ways that it can be done well. We also make the distinction between teaching religion and teaching about religion.
Yeah.
And they're two very different things, and one is not constitutional in almost every context, and the other is very important when you want, students to have a good understanding of the world around them and the people living in our country and the diversity that makes our nation what it is and the history of the world. There's been a huge influence of religion